What's up, everyone? Back for another episode of Locked On Bucks. Frank's back for another episode of Locked On Bucks. We continue to build up to Bucks and Lakers. There's a star returning for the Bucks, maybe. There's a star that is not going to be present for the Lakers. We'll talk about that. Frank's going to swerve. He's going to swerve that the way that he wants to look at this team might be out of how we've been discussing it on this show. A little bit looking to the future, let's just say. So we're going to get into that as well. And I hear the Bucks, of course, as you would always assume with the Milwaukee Bucks, the GQ Man of the Year is on the roster. So I guess we better bring that up as well. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN and NBA Australia. And joining me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. For today's episode, it is brought to you by Calm. For a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount off a premium subscription. Go to calm.com/Locked On NBA. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. And it's weird that we have to start this podcast and there's a LeBron promo with Calm, because we were just discussing this before we got on. What is Giannis doing? Dragging the chain with Calm? Why hasn't he got to deal with those guys? This guy is on the path to having more individual sponsorships than Shaq, which, as we know, I mean, Shaq historically has some of the most funniest commercials or individual sponsorships of all time. But it's always been a talking point in the NBA in previous years. I think Giannis is doing fine in Milwaukee financially. I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah, we literally, just as we were about to podcast, he dropped a new tweet about him being, I guess, I don't know, the face of Google Pixel, or at least doing ads for them. So, which of course is especially funny given, we've heard different stories over the years, dating back to the Jason Kidd era, about Tony Snell and Thon Maker being the holdouts who were not iPhone users. And of course, if you're on a group text, everybody's using an iPhone, you got the blue bubbles, you can share links easily. I have a friend who works at Google. Shout out to my guy Eli, one of my oldest college friends, and he ruins our college friend group chat because he works at Google, thus he has a Google phone. He doesn't have an iPhone, and so you paste links in and they all look all weird and nothing embeds properly and stuff like that. But so Giannis is now going to ruin, I guess, the Bucks group chat because he's using a Google phone. Or maybe he'll have, maybe he'll just keep using an iPhone and just he'll just say that he's using a Google phone. But yeah, so Giannis keeps doing more ads, and he's the GQ Athlete of the Year, which, of course, right? Got that photo spread, and had some semi-provocative comments about in there, or at least some comments that the rumor mongers have seized on regarding, kind of alluding to like, oh well, you got to kind of manufacture your own challenges, and maybe his next challenge won't be in Milwaukee or something like that. I don't know. I'm not worried about it, Kane. I don't think we need to waste a lot of oxygen on it. I feel like his current challenge is in Milwaukee. They're freaking 6-8, and they don't look very good right now. Granted, they've got injuries, but I feel like he's got enough challenges in Milwaukee right now. Even if he maybe will never be able to do wrong from here on out in the city of Milwaukee, the state of Wisconsin. But yeah, well deserved all this stuff, the ads, the fame. The accolades, but there's still some work to be done on the basketball court here, especially after a not so terrific start here to the season.
Yeah, I just put that cover, or I guess it was one of the covers, I'm not sure how they did it, but of Giannis looking there. And Khris Middleton this morning at practice was joking that he's the ugliest model he's ever seen. I'm going to push back on that, Khris. This is a good-looking man, and maybe he didn't feel that comfortable doing that. But certainly in my eyes, and of course, everyone respects my opinion in the world of modeling, I think he was looking pretty sharp. And by the way, when you talk about challenges, Giannis is obviously super stubborn, and he's wants to overcome obstacles. We've seen that big reason why he stayed in Milwaukee, wanted to win the championship here. So I guess the question would be, should the Bucks just keep sucking so then Giannis feels like he needs to drag the team out of this mediocrity that they currently find themselves in?
Yeah, I mean his free throw percentage, his 3-point percentage, his field goal percentage, all worse than they were last year. You got work to do, Giannis. Look in the mirror here. Do challenges, you know. But yeah, this homestand looks pretty promising in terms of getting back on track with the schedule they've got coming up here. The Lakers going to be without LeBron James on Wednesday, so obviously, again, I mean, with this version of the Bucks right now, even with Khris Middleton coming back, you know, he's probably going to be on a minutes limit. I don't think any games can be taken for granted, but you know what, they get the Pistons twice. I think they have the Thunder, and I forget the fifth team, but yeah, I mean, let's just say the schedule gods, at least for the next couple weeks, are smiling upon them. But again, they're 1-4 at home, so I guess at this point we probably can't take anything for granted.
Yeah, when was opening night? I think it's been over a month. Is that right? Since the
6 years ago. 6 years ago.
I mean, goodness, they haven't won a game at Fiserv in a month. Like, is there any danger, guys? So anyway, national TV, maybe that's the thing that gets them going. You mentioned that Khris Middleton is back. Bud did say they'll work his way. Oh, they'll work him back into it. So whatever that means for a minutes restriction, we all know by now you're going to get absolutely zero info on that. But based on what we see in Drew Holiday, I think it was around 20 minutes on his first night, even though different injuries, that's typically where they sort of have it. So I guess it'll be interesting to see whether he starts in this game or not. We know Drew came off the bench, I believe, for one game. But either way, we spoke about Khris Middleton yesterday, and I think the overall point that for a lot of these games this season, they've had to rely on Grayson Allen as their second option on offense, and he's been fantastic. But getting Khris Middleton back, hopefully, you know, some version of Khris Middleton that can help this team over these next couple of games. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing this guy play similar to Brook Lopez, similar to a few other guys already. He's already missed more games this season than he did last year. And then it's, you know, as you go through it, if you take a look at the numbers, I mean, that really sums it up. I think so far he has played something like 32 minutes or something on the court with Giannis through 14 games. It's not ideal. Let's say that.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously the circumstances of this as well. I mean, it didn't sound like he had, you know, any serious symptoms, but you never know. All right. I mean, seemingly every member of the Celtics has had longer term effects, you know, between Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart, and we'll see with Jaylen Brown as well talking about it. You know, you obviously just hope that it doesn't take him an extended period to feel like he can get his wind in games. But assuming that there aren't any effects like that, you know, I guess the silver lining would be, hey, you know, with such a short off season, especially Drew and Khris with the Olympics as well, you know, hopefully it was a chance to kind of disconnect a little bit, and get maybe some of that rest that obviously they, you know, just didn't have the benefit of during the off season. Obviously not the circumstances under which you would want to get rest, but we'll see. I mean, it took Drew a little while to come back last year when he came back from COVID. Obviously that was pre-vaccine. So hopefully for Khris, it's a little bit faster, and, you know, you can kind of get going quickly. But I mean, we saw with Drew. I mean, Drew's been very slow to kind of get on track this season, coming back from injuries that he sustained. Started really well, right? I mean, he was great in the first half before he got hurt against Brooklyn, and then was also very good in San Antonio when he came back very briefly. But since then, just, I don't know, it's felt like a lot of those playoff performances offensively where he just, you know, takes a whole lot of shots and stuff just does not go down. So, you know, they need Drew Holiday to start playing more like the guy we saw last year. And as you said on the last show with Justin, look, is he going to shoot, you know, almost 50% and 40% from three? Okay, maybe not, right? That may not be what his true sort of shooting splits are in an average season, but you certainly don't. I mean, I certainly wouldn't expect him to be in the low 30s from three, and, you know, low 40s from overall. So we know Drew Holiday's, I think, going to start playing better. It'd be nice to see him get to the rim a little bit more. His foul rate drawing is way down, and again, it's not like he was drawing fouls the kind of James Harden way or something like that either. So so we'll see. They need Giannis. I mean, they just need their best players to be playing well, because that's kind of the ironic part, right? Is that on the one hand, you'd say, well, look at who's around them. But don't blame Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton. I mean, those two guys are having career years. They're shooting the ball incredibly well. And I think Giannis, after kind of the, settled in, was playing really well. And then he's kind of come back down to earth. His shooting, settling for a lot of jump shots right now, which I think is kind of understandable given the lack of help he's getting, having to create really all of his own looks. Throwing up a lot of bricks. He has not become suddenly a good 3-point shooter. He's at 27%. His mid-range game, he's at 40%, which I think would be a career high right now. So, I mean, that's been pretty solid, but back to around 68% from the free throw line. It's been a bit of a struggle here of late, but, again, it's a long season and, you just have to kind of fight through these things. And I don't think he needs to change his free throw form or something like that. I think he's, again, just got working through it, and hopefully a couple of days off here kind of helps him. Hopefully, again, you get Khris back, you get some of that creation back. We'll still see with Brook, but at least offensively, offensively, they don't really have any excuses once Khris comes back. As much as Brook, I think, is really valuable and could do different things. He's obviously not a huge part of their offense. He's obviously much more of a supporting piece. So when Giannis is on the floor, Khris, Drew, especially when they have two of those guys on the floor, I don't think offensively, at least, they have much excuse to not be a high octane offense once these guys all are back together on the floor. And, again, hopefully that starts on Wednesday.
Yeah, we had a comment on the YouTubes the other day, and it was a listener that suggested or that sort of put the thought out there that Giannis is shooting a lot of these jump shots and potentially he's doing it just to try and get reps in and try and improve. And I sort of pushed back on it a little bit for the exact reason that you did. I think part of it is just like, okay, well, I'm the only guy doing everything here, and you've spoke about the other guys that have contributed, but Giannis is the main ball handler. Giannis is the main distributor. Giannis is the main scorer. Giannis is the center field defender that he's doing it all. That sometimes I feel like he's just like, okay, I need a possession off. Let me shoot this three to see if we can knock this down. So it's probably a bit of a mix of both, but I kind of do see it as him needing a bit of a break as well, which is why you hope that Khris Middleton returning, and obviously Drew, as he continues to work into it, helps that. Giannis spoke a little bit about the frustration that he had the other day. I spoke about calm right off the top, and maybe after a game, he's also a father. He's got 2 boys. There's lots of things going on. Maybe he can get into a bit of a sleep routine, which is what LeBron James has been doing, because if you want to know what makes LeBron James King James, it's somebody does in the basketball court. It's sleep. That's right. Sleep is his superpower. Calm, the #1 app for sleep and meditation, has teamed up with LeBron James to help you activate the power of sleep. When it comes to athletes, we tend to focus on the physical fitness, but there's another side to the game that's just as important: mental fitness. Calm, the #1 app for sleep and meditation, has teamed up with LeBron James to help you train your mind and become the champion version of yourself. For LeBron, sleep is a critical part of his mental fitness routine. So if you head to calm.com/LockedOnNBA, for a limited time, you'll get 40% off a Calm premium subscription. With Calm, you have access to the nature scenes, which apparently LeBron loves. So he likes listening to rain when he goes to sleep. So there's so much more, though. There's sleep stories, meditation, so you can be ready for any challenges that life throws your way. Again, for a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount on a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/LockedOnNBA. Unlock content to help you focus, ease stress, and sleep better. Get started at calm.com/LockedOnNBA. That's calm.com/LockedOnNBA. And when you wake up, this is the thing. I'm a terrible sleeper, but when I get a good night's sleep, I wake up hungry. And the first thing on my mind is Built Bar every single day when I have a good sleep. I'm just thinking about Built Bar. When can I have my first Built Bar? Is it acceptable to have it for breakfast? I think it is. I think it's acceptable to have a Built Bar for breakfast, but it's also acceptable to have it for dessert. With Thanksgiving coming up, you can swap the pie for a Built Bar, because one slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories, and they have 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. So replace the coconut cream pie with coconut Built Bar, raspberry Built Bar instead of the raspberry pie. You get the picture. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. There's new surprises all month. Limited time flavors arriving at built.com regularly. So check the site often. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, as I mentioned off the top, thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. As far as other podcasts go, the Packers back on the winning list. Maybe you want to check out Locked On Packers. I saw the Brewers made some sort of trade. Maybe you want to check out our friends at Locked On Brewers. Anyway, you get the idea. There's a podcast for every team, so you can go and check those out. Frank, I saw you tweeting this morning some interesting numbers, and you sent a question to our DM that I thought was interesting. You asked, and it was basically based around the fact of what seems like the biggest issue with this team in terms of the big man rotation, but you were looking at it through a bit of a different lens. I don't know if you want to get into this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, and you and Justin talked about it as well. I mean, there's the question of like, well, should they get another big man, right? And I guess the first question is, what is the assumption on Brook Lopez and when he comes back? And obviously, everyone listening to this is saying, well, Frank, there's no timetable being released on when Brook Lopez is coming back. So how are we supposed to know? And that is completely fair. And I know you and Eric and Mitchell and Dean, we in our messages, it's always Eric. I don't know how many times he's kind of expressed his frustration at the fact that Bud doesn't give the media any real information, even though they ask him constantly about it.
How can he trick Bud, by the way? Is there some way that he can trick Bud? Is there some way he can ask the question, frame it differently to kind of... When do you think Bobby Portis will come off the bench or something like that? I don't know.
It would have to be, it'd probably be something like, if I were to give you one of those cookies from wherever it is that he likes those chocolate chip cookies, so you'd have to frame it through blackmail or something. I don't know. But he did at least allude to Brook progressing and doing some stuff, or I don't know the exact quote, but there was actually an allusion to Brook Lopez doing something, which is good. And he's obviously been traveling with the team, which is a positive sign. But I mean, my assumption is that they, and I think, to be clear too, I don't think that they have known since the outset that he was going to be out this long. I imagine they probably didn't really know, because backs, so let's be honest, are kind of weird. Like, it's not like a timetable for like a torn ligament that when you do surgery that this is the timetable for coming back. I mean, obviously, if they thought it was going to be a thing, then he wouldn't have probably played as much in the preseason as he did, and they probably wouldn't have thought that it'd be a problem. So I think there's a strong element of like, they honestly don't know exactly. I mean, when I've poked around, I've gotten kind of mixed messages, but I don't know, it doesn't seem like there's an assumption here that he's going to be like out for the season or something like that. But I think let's make an assumption that he's back by like early December. Okay. But just for the sake of this argument. So I think it's still valid to ask the question of like, okay, well, especially with Giannis and the way that Giannis is taking, an additional kind of beating and load on him having to play center all the time, is it worth adding a big man? And so I think the first question is, well, is that guy, like, are you saying like just add some random guy who you literally give a, non-guaranteed contract to, and then in 3 weeks, let's say if when Brook comes back, you just waive that guy? You could do that. I mean, you could, right? I would say that type of player who's currently just sort of sitting around and would just be happy to play for, be on a team for a few weeks, and then most likely get cut again, probably is not a guy that's actually going to make you better on the court. Like, maybe he improves what you can do defensively, and maybe he rebounds a little bit better. But, again, is that guy going to be good offensively? Well, if he's not on a team right now, it's probably because he's not that good, right?
What's Dragon Bender up to? Is he around? Is he?
Well, and I mean, it's like, I know there's it's a couple of mentioned Marc Gasol, right? I was Googling around. I'm not exactly sure what Marc Gasol wants to do. Like, he doesn't want to retire. I think he's in Spain right now. I'm not really sure what he wants to do. Like, we were talking about Aaron Baines, right, recently, and like, is Aaron Baines upright? Is Aaron Baines able to play basketball? It doesn't sound like it. So it's not like, there's just a long line of guys that you could just plug in and it's going to help you immediately, right? This team is not good offensively right now. So putting like just some defensive first guy who's just like a rim roller, I'm guessing would also just make Giannis have to shoot more jump shots, because it would probably make the floor spacing, worse and all that. So I don't think there's necessarily like some like really easy kind of quick fix. So I think really it's like, I think you have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, if you think Brook is going to be back, and there's some risk that maybe he re-injures or whatever, but I don't think you cross that bridge until you get to it. And if you think Brook Lopez is going to be out for the year, or if you think, come back and you're worried maybe he'll get hurt again, to me, that's more of like you have to figure that out by the trade deadline type thing. I think the question I always ask is like, well, what are you really solving for? Well, you're solving for the postseason. And I realize it's maybe right now we should also be noting that they need to get a lot better in the regular season so they make the playoffs and have a decent seed. But the eye on the prize is the NBA championship, defending that. And principally, like, can you sign somebody who's going to help you against the Brooklyn Nets? Pick your other favorite, contender that the Bucks might have to go through. Are you acquiring somebody, and is there a way to think about like making yourself better against that team in the long term? And so, my view is like, you probably, like we saw last year and 2 years ago, right? I mean, you had Robin Lopez. Everyone would love to have Robin Lopez right now because he's the ultimate Brook Lopez insurance, right? But Robin didn't play a minute after the first round 2 years ago. And you could argue, well, maybe he could have been useful in some respect, but again, like we saw last year, they won an NBA championship playing only Brook Lopez as a true big man, and then doing a lot of smaller stuff with Giannis and obviously some Bobby Portis, a lot of PJ Tucker, et cetera. So I think, again, just loading up on, another traditional big man, it's not really like something you're doing for the playoffs unless Brook is out. And so I think, I would view it as like, what is your real plan to get another potential contributor? And I think part of the challenge is like, you don't really know right now because you just haven't had your team together. And to me, I think the one stat that I tweeted about earlier today, which is a stat from this year, but it's 100% consistent with what happened last year and what has happened in the press before this player came to the Bucks, is Bobby Portis and his defense, especially when he's not playing with another big man. And it kind of just jumps out. I mean, Bobby, without Giannis on the floor this year, and obviously he hasn't played with Brook either, Bucks are giving up, I think, 125, 126 defensive rating. They're only scoring 99 points per 100. So, I mean, they're getting completely torched when Bobby's on the floor as the lone big man. Obviously, Bobby's going to Bobby hasn't been at his best. I think Bobby will get better offensively. I think the team will get better offensively with him on the floor, so it won't be quite as bad. But even last year, I mean, they were really bad with him on the floor by himself. They had a 121 defensive rating with him in the regular season and like 1,100 possessions. That's a lot. And they were terrible. I think they had a 126 defensive rating in about, I think maybe like a couple hundred possessions during the playoffs as well. So, I mean, even during the playoffs, like they were never like good with just Bobby on the floor. Now, I think they got away with those minutes, especially in the finals. But that's not like a recipe for winning regular season basketball. And I don't think after what we saw in the Nets series, that throwing Bobby Portis out there against the Nets is a proven thing that you can count on either. So my question would be, you were able to get by without essentially Bobby or obviously Dante in the second round against Brooklyn. And so I think really what you're solving for is what do your lineups need to look like against the Brooklyn Nets? I mean, that's what I think you should have started your offseason looking at. I think that's why a lot of us, I mean, my initial gut reaction was, would I rather have PJ Tucker or Bobby Portis if I had to pick? I would have said PJ Tucker because he actually was useful against the Brooklyn Nets and throughout the playoffs, whereas Bobby was much more stop-start. So I think that's, to me, the question is not like just add some like big, zone drop sort of old school traditional center to replace Brook Lopez, because anybody you get is not going to be nearly what Brook Lopez is to me. I mean, like, I think that's the first mistake is just assuming that you can just add a big center and he's going to suddenly replicate what Brook did or let you do those sort of same things. But to me, it's kind of a question of like, okay, how do you make sure that you're not just, kind of putting Giannis in a better position, but Bobby's hopefully going to be healthy. Hopefully Bobby's a guy, obviously, you want to figure out how to make work. And so I think part of it also is like, how do you find lineups that can make Bobby Portis successful? And if you put him out there with Giannis, I think that has shown it can work. They were plus 10 net rating last year with him. I think they're plus 10 net rating or so this year with him. But, when you talk about like, why were the Bucks much worse on defense, or sorry, why were the Bucks much worse overall last year, including on defense, than they were the previous year? Again, I mean, the fact that you went from Robin Lopez as your backup center to Bobby and, kind of committee as your backup center, I think was obviously a big part of why they had a big drop off defensively last year. And, it worked out. But I think there's some kind of reckoning that they're going to have to kind of come to terms with. And, Bobby Portis is not a long-term replacement for Brook Lopez. I think that should be very clear to people. If your idea is that you're going to trade Brook next offseason when he's an expiring contract, and you're going to sign Bobby to a big new contract as a reward, and then that's your two, he's going to be your main center next to Giannis. I don't think that's a solution. I think Bobby is what he is. He's a really nice scorer off the bench, a nice spark plug, and he can be very kind of like hot or cold in terms of his impact on your team's ability to win games. So that's my zag, my long-winded zag, which I think sort of outlines to, I don't know that you need to try to solve for the Brook situation right now. I think you probably wait for it to come back, but I think you do need to start thinking long and hard about how do you sort of configure your big man rotation in the playoffs. And especially if you get into a situation like the Brooklyn series, if Bobby's not a very viable option, then what are you doing to eat all those remaining minutes? And obviously playing Giannis a ton is part of it. But who's the PJ Tucker replacement? And I think Shemi Ojale has shown some signs of life lately. I'm sure they want to continue to look into that experiment and sort of see what they have there. But I would rather they can kind of continue to experiment with some of that stuff, especially with Khris coming back, and you're getting sort of more of a facsimile of what the rest of your rotation would look like outside of Brook, than kind of think that you can just move too quickly and kind of plug the Brook hole, which again, hopefully was only a short-term hole.
So it's obviously been a bit of a weird start to the season, just even from a win-loss point of view. And doing these podcasts, we haven't had to go through this a lot. I think at the start of the year, we looked at the win total with betonline.ag, and I think it was 53.5 or 54.5. But anyway, let's say they want to get to 54 wins. They need to go to 48-20 the rest of the regular season, which seems, if I've done that in my head, if I've got my math right, that seems kind of crazy. But anyway, the point is, if you go to betonline.ag right now, you can check out that win total. They're back better than ever with a new web interface for the start of basketball season, and they have more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. We've got a promo code. Just use Locked On, and you can get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit, whether it's basketball that you want to bet on, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, whatever it is. Favorite Vegas casino games, they've got them all. Let's BetOnline where the game starts. So I guess to your point, and this is kind of, I honestly can't remember how much we got into this yesterday on the podcast as we continue the chat around Portis and the big man stuff. I think if the Bucks know better than we do what's going on with Brook Lopez, and I think if they feel that they need to get a Brook replacement right now or around Christmas or later on in the season, that's when you're looking at a trade, exactly for the reason that you were speaking about, that you're not going to get a guy off the street that's going to be able to do what Brook Lopez does, and it feels a little bit pointless. There's some people that have said, well, they should have thought about this in the offseason. Now, of course, you can't predict, but you could. I can understand why there's people out there saying, okay, just because Brook was healthy last year, maybe you got lucky that he's such a huge man. So maybe you should have prepared for it. And maybe you should have tried to get, an Andre Drummond or a Dwight Howard or these, veteran bigs that are on these contending teams. Whatever. I don't really care about that. But I think what the Bucks are looking for, to your point, and the Nets basically got every single veteran guy, whether it was Marcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap. I don't know how much any of those guys have got left in the tank, but those are the guys that, you'll get some sort of veteran that'll probably pop up around the buyout market. And you're right. Maybe the other addition is that you go smaller and you have someone that can do some other stuff defensively with Dante DiVincenzo there. But at the moment, the big man division has been a little bit of a concern, particularly when it comes to rebounding defensively. We watched that Celtics game the other night where it felt like either Jason Tatum or Dennis Schroeder were just getting. I mean, the Bucks were just giving them the switch, and they'd be on Bobby Portis. And it's not Bobby Portis' fault, by the way. I mean, I thought he did a decent job. The game went to overtime because he was at least able to contest Tatum, but it's just unfeasible moving forward. But I hadn't thought about it directly with the Brooklyn series and the PJ Tucker stuff. Is obviously interesting there. So the listeners or the viewers can let us know what they think, what they would do, like they always do when we can discuss that. As far as this Lakers game, before we wrap it up, 6:30 Central Time tip. Like we said, there's no LeBron. I think AD is probable on the injury report. He had a thumb. He also got tossed out of the game for tying up his shoelace yesterday. So there's been some weird stuff going on with the Lakers, but they've been playing terrible. And our Central Division rivals, the Bulls, absolutely smoked them on their home floor. I know at some point we're going to talk about the Bulls, but they're looking pretty good. But this does, just with the way it's going, both these teams have been struggling all season. I think this is one where you come home, you're feeling good about yourself after being on the road. You got to get this one. This is a gettable one. They could use a win. Let's say that 2 straight losses.
This better not be the game where Russell Westbrook, goes 4 of 6 from 3-point range or something like that. Like, come on. Yeah, I mean, I think you obviously look at this game as one that you hope is there for the taking. I think, thinking about size and teams that have given the Bucks problems with size, certainly the Lakers, have enjoyed playing bigger. I'm not sure. Do you have the injury report handy? I know. I think Dwight was hurt at some point. They started Davis at center, but I think the assumption was they were going to be back to starting AD at power forward once they kind of got healthy again. But obviously, LeBron being out, I mean, LeBron is a big part of how they were able to play big too, and that's I think a point as well. I think when people talk about being big, the natural inclination is always to think about your centers and whether your center is a traditional big man. But I think the Bucks, part of what getting better and playing bigger and rebounding and doing that stuff is also about the other guys on the floor. I mean the guards and wings. Do they play up a spot? You mentioned Dante. Eventually he'll come back. And one of his, I'd say, redeeming qualities is that he rebounds and competes in ways defensively that kind of makes you play a little bit bigger than certainly you might expect from a typical guard. Or at times he's sort of like a de facto, nominally the point guard. You hope with Jrue Holiday now back, hopefully he starts playing better, and Khris Middleton coming back now as well. I mean, the Bucks, we've seen a lot of that. What, Grayson Allen is the starting small forward, or Jrue is the starting small forward? I mean, even with Bobby and Giannis starting at the 2 big spots, Bucks have been pretty small outside of that. And, Pat Connaughton, as much as he's a good rebounder, I mean, Pat's 6'4", 6'5". So they haven't been bringing a lot of size. So again, Khris Middleton, not a big man, obviously. But from a wing size perspective, Khris brings pretty good size, and especially for a small forward, or at times can play as a shooting guard. So hopefully the Bucks getting a little bit bigger, and I think LA will probably be a test. And Russell Westbrook likes to rebound. I'm not probably does a lot of rebound stealing from his big guys, but this is definitely a game where you hope that the size factor doesn't become an issue again for the Bucks, because certainly you look at the rest of the rosters, this is an opportunity to start to get right. And again, I think, to me, that starts with Giannis and Jrue. I don't think you can count on Khris just coming in and saving the day here. I don't think Jrue and Giannis have been playing the way they would want to. But this is obviously an opportunity for Giannis to, on a national stage, maybe not the marquee matchup with LeBron that everybody would want, but he's still got presumably AD that he's going to be going up against. And it's an opportunity for him to remind people why he's a much better player than Anthony Davis.
All right. Don't forget to check out the Locked On Bets podcast as well, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Still. And we'll be back after that Lakers game. Hopefully it's a game we enjoy. Hopefully we're in a good mood after that game. As we said, Khris Middleton likely going to be back for this one, which is going to be fun to see. And they have this home stretch that Frank pointed to at the start of the season. I think they've got Orlando in there as well. So Orlando, Oklahoma City. So hopefully they can get rolling a little bit here and make sure the GQ Man of the Year is happy and enjoying his basketball and not feeling frustrated anymore. But we'll leave it there for myself and Frank. We'll catch you guys after the Lakers game.